welcome to our deep dive on Tantra.
Tantra.
It seems like you're ready to kind of go beyond the usual misconceptions
Right.
and really explore what this ancient practice is all about.
Yeah.
Our guide for this journey is Ecstasy through Tantra,
Okay.
a book that dives headfirst into the core principles and techniques.
Yes. And this book frames Tantra in a really interesting way,
Okay.
presenting it as a science,
Okay.
a technology, even for transforming the human experience.
Okay.
The author suggests that Tantra may be even older than practices like yoga and alchemy.
Wow. That puts things into perspective.
Yeah.
So it's not just some mystical,
Right.
esoteric thing, but a practical system for personal growth.
Exactly. The book emphasizes that Tantra is a path to realizing your full potential, not just about sex.
Okay.
Although it does delve into the power of sexual energy as a force for transformation.
Okay, so how does the book reconcile those two ideas?
Right.
Because it does seem to place a lot of emphasis on sex, even calling it a religious rite at one point.
That's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
The book describes specific practices like the asanas of love,
Okay.
which use physical postures to channel that energy.
And it even includes illustrations.
It does.
But then there's the Mass of the Holy Ghost,
Right.
which involves, well, bodily fluids as part of a ritual that seems pretty intense,
Yeah.
even a bit unsettling.
It's definitely pushing boundaries.
Yeah.
The idea is that these rituals harness the energy of sexual union for spiritual purposes, but the author is very clear that the elements need to be properly consecrated.
Right.
Or the practice could backfire.
Okay, so there's a real emphasis on doing things correctly,
Yes.
with intention and awareness.
Absolutely.
Now, something else that struck me was the book's seemingly contradictory views on women.
Okay.
There's some pretty harsh quotes from Indian philosophy,
Uh-huh.
but then it also calls women God's life adornment.
Right.
It's a bit jarring.
That reflects a broader debate within Indian philosophy
Oh.
about the role of women in sexuality, and the book doesn't shy away from that. However, Tantra leans towards reverence for the feminine,
Okay.
especially in the form of Shakti, the divine feminine energy.
Shakti, the divine feminine. It's almost like the Western concept of a goddess, isn't it?
Yeah, you could say that.
And speaking of Western traditions, the book suggests a fascinating connection between Tantra and modern witchcraft.
It does.
Yeah.
It's a really thought-provoking idea.
Yeah.
The author points out shared elements like reverence for the feminine,
Right.
ritual nudity, and the use of magic and ritual to influence reality. It makes you wonder about the universality of certain spiritual impulses across different cultures.
It definitely makes you think.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back to this idea of the feminine and its power.
Okay.
The book claims that semen is the elixir of life,
Right.
even going so far as to suggest a semen facial path.
Yes, that's a traditional tantric belief now from a modern scientific perspective.
Right.
The idea that semen has life-prolonging properties doesn't hold up,
Yeah.
but the book is pointing to something beyond the physical substance. It's about the psychic and psychological effects of sexual energy.
So it's not about the literal substance itself, but the energy it embodies.
Precisely, think of it like a battery. It holds energy,
Okay.
but you wouldn't drink the battery acid to access it.
Right.
Tantra is about harnessing that energy, and it describes practices like Vajroli Mudra,
Right.
where men draw semen back into the body.
That sounds incredibly intense and maybe even a little dangerous.
It's definitely not for beginners.
Yeah.
The book stresses the importance of learning from a qualified teacher and practicing with extreme caution,
Right.
but it highlights this core tantric principle of controlling and redirecting sexual energy
Okay.
for heightened consciousness.
So it's about mastery, both physical and mental.
Yes.
Now, the book goes into great detail about the chakras,
Okay.
those energy centers in the body.
Right.
It even suggests that each chakra can be awakened through specific sensory experiences during lovemaking.
It does. The book provides detailed descriptions and symbolic paintings of each chakra, linking them to specific glands and parts of the body. It's like seeing a map of the body's energetic system.
Each chakra is like a key, and specific sensations unlock different levels of consciousness.
That's a great analogy, and what's fascinating is that the book presents oral sex
Okay.
in a surprisingly open way.
Okay.
Not as something taboo, but as a way to integrate consciousness by uniting opposites.
That's not what I expected to find in a book about spiritual practices.
Yeah.
It definitely challenges some preconceived notions.
It does. That's because Tantra recognizes the importance of touch as a primary avenue for spiritual exploration.
Okay.
The book describes the tongue as a tactile magnifier, emphasizing its incredible sensitivity.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all these seemingly disparate pieces fit together. It's
Right.
like Tantra is weaving together physical sensations, energy work, and spiritual awareness.
It is.
And speaking of weaving, the book concludes with a detailed outline for a tantric weekend.
It does, yes. It's a guided practice for couples. Designed to deepen intimacy, trust, and sensory awareness within a relationship, it involves special clothing rituals
Okay.
and a gradual buildup to a final, potentially explosive sexual release on Sunday evening.
It sounds like a truly immersive experience, but it also requires a lot of commitment and vulnerability, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. This isn't a casual weekend getaway.
Right.
It's a deep dive into the heart of Tantra.
And speaking of deep dives, the book also touches on the use of psychedelic drugs in Tantra.
It does. Right now, the book is very clear that this should only be done with proper preparation.
Okay.
And guidance from a guru, it's presented as a tool for consciousness expansion,
Right.
but not to be taken lightly.
So like any powerful tool, it can be used for good or for ill, depending on the user.
Exactly. The author uses a rather striking metaphor
Okay.
that illustrate the potential dangers. He compares it to dynamiting open the door to a treasure vault, the unconscious mind, and damaging the door so that it cannot easily be shut at will.
That's a powerful image. So preparation and proper guidance are absolutely crucial.
The author draws a sharp distinction between the way a trained yogi might use psychedelics
Okay.
compared to someone with no prior training or discipline.
Yeah.
He suggests that the untrained user risks a kind of karmic debt,
Okay.
potentially experiencing negative side effects like depression or even psychosis.
Wow. That's sobering.
Yeah.
It seems like Tantra is about approaching these practices with respect and reverence, not just diving in head first.
It is exactly. It's about honoring the power of these practices and using them responsibly for spiritual growth.
So for someone who's just beginning to explore Tantra, what are some of the key takeaways from what we've covered so far?
I think what's most important to remember is that this is a journey, not a destination. It's
Right.
about gradually opening yourself to new experiences and deeper levels of awareness,
Right.
both within yourself and with a partner.
So it's not about instant gratification,
Right.
but a gradual unfolding.
Yes, the book talks about the importance of patience, discipline, and a willingness to let go of preconceived notions.
Right.
And as we've discussed, the guidance of a qualified teacher is essential.
That makes sense. It's like any complex field. It helps to have a guide.
Yeah.
You know, one of the most thought-provoking ideas in the book is that every sexual union creates a magical child.
It's a powerful metaphor.
It is. But what does it mean if we apply that metaphor beyond literal children? What other kinds of creations might be possible through the practices of Tantra?
That's a great question, and it's something to ponder as we continue our exploration.
So from semen facials to witchcraft connections and the potential for creating magical children, ecstasy through Tantra has definitely taken us on a wild ride through the world of Tantra. What stands out to you from this exploration?
For me, what's most fascinating is how Tantra weaves together the physical, the
Yeah.
energetic, and the spiritual. It's not about denying the body or its pleasures, but about using them consciously as a pathway to higher awareness.
I agree. It's a very holistic approach.
Yeah.
And it challenges us to reconsider our assumptions about sex spirituality
Yes.
and the nature of reality itself. Well, on that note, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive. We'll continue our exploration of Tantra in part 2.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of Tantra.
Before we took a pause, we were discussing that compelling concept from Ecstasy through Tantra, the idea that every sexual union creates a magical child.
It's a metaphor that really stretches our understanding of creation, going beyond the literal, to explore the potential of Tantra to transform us on a much deeper level.
Absolutely. So let's unpack some more of the specific techniques and practices from the book that might help us tap into this creative energy. What stood out to you?
Well, the book talks about several breathing exercises, or pranayama, which are essential in many yogic traditions. One example is the basal lock, or mula bandha.
Yes, Mula Bandha. It involves contracting and releasing specific muscles in the pelvic floor. The book even suggests it can help with things like urinary incontinence, pretty practical benefit, alongside the energetic aspects.
It is, and that connection between the physical and the energetic is key in Tantra. Now, the book also goes into detail about another technique, Vajroli Mudra, which, as we mentioned earlier, is quite advanced and definitely requires careful practice.
It involves drawing semen back into the body, right? Not exactly something you'd try on a whim.
Right, it requires a high level of control and focus. The author really emphasizes the importance of learning this technique from a qualified teacher and approaching it with caution.
Good advice. And that speaks to a broader point the book makes about the importance of having a guru, a spiritual teacher, on the tantric path.
Yes, the guru plays a crucial role in guiding students through the challenges and potential pitfalls of these practices. It's about having a trusted mentor who can really support your spiritual development.
It makes sense. It's like having a map and a compass when you're venturing into uncharted territory.
Mm.
Now, another thing that intrigued me was the role of sound and mantra in Tantra, which the book delves into quite deeply.
Absolutely. The author explains how specific sounds and mantras can be used to awaken and activate the chakras. For example, the bija mantra Lam is associated with the Muladhara or root chakra, while Ram is linked to the Manipura or navel chakra.
And these mantras are often chanted during lovemaking to enhance the energetic experience.
Exactly. It's about using sound and vibration to amplify and direct the flow of energy within the body.
It's like fine-tuning the energetic frequencies of the chakras through sound. What a fascinating concept.
It is, and the book also delves into the importance of touch, exploring how different types of touch can stimulate the chakras.
Yes, and it encourages couples to go beyond the, shall we say, usual approach to lovemaking, exploring a wider range of sensual experiences.
Right. The book emphasizes expanding our understanding of what we consider sexual and viewing the entire body as a source of pleasure and energy.
It's like reclaiming the full spectrum of sensuality, wouldn't you say?
I agree. It's about recognizing the sacredness of the body and the divine potential within it.
Now, going back to that idea of the magical child, do you think this concept of creation applies to individual practitioners as well, even outside of a sexual relationship?
That's a great question. If we think of the magical child as a metaphor for transformation and the realization of our full potential, then yes, it's a concept that can apply to individuals too.
So through these tantric practices, we're essentially birthing a new version of ourselves, a more awakened and empowered self.
Precisely, it's about using these techniques to unlock our latent potential and create a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
Okay, now I'm really starting to see how it all comes together. It's not just about sex. It's about using the power of sexual energy both individually and with a partner to fuel our spiritual growth and transformation.
Yes, and it's about seeing the world through a more expansive lens, recognizing the divine in ourselves and others, and in the very fabric of existence.
So it's about cultivating a deeper awareness, a more profound connection to life itself.
Exactly, and it's about embracing the transformative power of love, both physically and spiritually.
Love, creation, transformation. These are themes that run throughout Ecstasy through Tantra.
They do, and they resonate deeply with the human experience, regardless of cultural background or spiritual tradition.
You're right at its core. Tantra seems to be about tapping into a universal energy, a life force that connects us all.
I agree. And it offers a path for those who seek to awaken that energy within themselves and use it to create a more vibrant and fulfilling life.
Now, for someone drawn to this path, what are some initial steps they might consider to further explore Tantra?
Well, reading books like Ecstasy through Tantra is a great start. It provides a solid overview of the fundamental principles and practices. But as the author repeatedly emphasizes, finding a qualified teacher or guru is crucial for those who want to go deeper and practice safely and effectively.
It's like with any specialized field, having a guide can make all the difference. Would you also say it's important to approach this path with a healthy dose of discernment and critical thinking?
Absolutely. While Tantra offers powerful tools for transformation, it's important to be aware of potential pitfalls and avoid getting caught up in dogma or rigid beliefs.
So it's about striking a balance between tradition and personal exploration.
Exactly. It's about honoring the ancient wisdom of Tantra while also making space for individual expression and growth.
Now, the book also provides some interesting insights into the differences between Eastern and Western approaches to sexuality and spirituality. For instance, it explores the Ankh, the ancient Egyptian symbol of eternal life and its connection to sexual energy.
It's fascinating how the author draws these parallels between different cultures and their symbolic representations of sexual energy. He suggests that the Ankh, with its combined male and female symbolism, points to the ancient Egyptian recognition of sexual union as a source of creation and renewal.
It's like the Ankh visually represents the Tantric principle of uniting opposites, wouldn't you say?
Exactly, and this theme of uniting opposites is woven throughout Tantra, from the union of Shiva and Shakti, the masculine and feminine principles, to the integration of physical and spiritual experiences.
So it's about transcending duality and finding wholeness through the union of seemingly disparate forces.
That's a great way to put it. It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of all things and seeing the divine spark that resides within every aspect of creation.
The book also digs into the symbolic significance of the number 6 in Tantra. It suggests that this number represents the 6 major genital erogenous zones of both males and females, forming a sort of sexagram at the heart of tantric practice.
Yes, and it's interesting how the book ties this numerical symbolism back to the concept of the hexagram, the six-pointed star formed by the interlocking of two triangles. One triangle represents the masculine principle and the other the feminine. It highlights once again the tantric emphasis on the union of opposites as a pathway to wholeness and spiritual realization.
So the number 6 becomes a symbolic representation of the transformative potential within sexual union.
Exactly, and the author points out that this symbolic significance extends further even to language. He mentions the Latin word sexennium, which refers to a period of 6 years, and connects it to the Greek prefix hex, also meaning six.
So we see this numerical symbolism cropping up in different languages and cultural contexts.
We do. It suggests a deeper, perhaps even archetypal significance associated with the number six and its connection to cycles of creation, transformation, and renewal.
It's fascinating how these seemingly separate threads, language, symbolism, spiritual practice, all weave together to enrich our understanding of Tantra.
It speaks to the depth and complexity of this ancient practice.
Okay, let's delve into another fascinating aspect of the book. Its exploration of the subtle energy flows within the body. It talks about the nadis, or energy channels, and how tantric practices can activate and purify them.
Yes, and the author draws a comparison between these nadis and the meridians used in traditional Chinese medicine. It suggests a shared understanding of the body's energetic anatomy across different cultures.
It's like we're seeing a convergence of wisdom from various traditions, all pointing to this subtle energy system that underpins our physical being.
Exactly, and Tantra, with its emphasis on experiencing and channeling energy, offers a unique path to access and work with the system.
Now, the book also delves into some pretty advanced tantric techniques like Kichari Mudra.
Yes, Kichari Mudra involves the rather extraordinary practice of extending the tongue to reach back and stimulate specific areas within the nasal cavity. It's said to awaken the Ajna chakra, also known as the third eye, which is associated with higher consciousness and psychic abilities.
Wow, that definitely sounds advanced, perhaps even a bit intimidating for beginners. And the book does mention potential risks if Kichari Mudra is practiced incorrectly.
It does. This highlights the importance of approaching these practices with caution and seeking proper guidance from a qualified teacher. As with any powerful tool, there's a potential for harm if used improperly.
So it's about respecting the power of these practices and not rushing into anything beyond your current level of experience and understanding.
Absolutely. It's about approaching Tantra as a gradual unfolding, a journey of self-discovery and spiritual growth.
Well said. Now let's discuss another intriguing concept from the book. The idea that sexual activity can stimulate the production of amrita, often referred to as the nectar of immortality.
This is where Tantra intersects with alchemy, the ancient art of transformation. The book suggests that amrita is a subtle substance produced within the body as a result of heightened sexual energy, and it's associated with rejuvenation and spiritual awakening.
It's like Tantra offers a framework for understanding how to alchemize sexual energy into higher states of consciousness.
Exactly, and it ties back to the concept of the magical child, the idea that something new and transformative is born from the union of opposites.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together. The symbolism, the energy flows, the alchemical processes, they all contribute to a deeper understanding of the transformative power of Tantra.
Right, and it's this transformative potential that makes Tantra such a compelling path for those seeking to awaken to a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
It has been a thought-provoking journey so far, speaking of journeys. The book outlines a specific practice called the Tantric Weekend, designed to deepen intimacy and spiritual connection within a relationship.
Yes, we briefly touched upon this earlier, but it's worth exploring further. The Tantric Weekend is essentially a structured retreat for couples involving specific rituals, sensual exercises, and a gradual build-up to a potentially explosive sexual release on Sunday evening.
It sounds intense, like a crash course in tantric intimacy.
Yeah.
What are some of the key elements of this practice?
It involves creating a sacred space, free from distractions, and setting an intention for the weekend. It also emphasizes mindful communication, sensual touch, and exploring a wide range of erotic experiences.
So it's about going beyond the typical goal-oriented approach to sex and fully immersing yourselves in the present moment.
Exactly. The author stresses the importance of slowing down, savoring each sensation, and allowing the energy to build gradually. It's about cultivating a state of heightened awareness and deep connection with your partner.
It sounds incredibly powerful, but it also seems like it requires a lot of trust and vulnerability.
It does. The Tantric Weekend is not for the faint of heart. It's a deep dive into the heart of Tantra, requiring a willingness to surrender to the process and be fully present with your partner.
I can see how this practice could be transformative for a couple, helping them break through old patterns and experience a deeper level of intimacy.
Yes, and it's about recognizing the sacredness of the sexual union and using it as a pathway to spiritual awakening.
Now, shifting gears slightly, I'm curious about the book's discussion of the potential dangers of practicing Tantra incorrectly. For example, it mentions the risk of creating cliphotic horrors if rituals aren't performed properly.
Yes, this is where things get a bit more esoteric and maybe even a little unsettling. Qliphonic horrors are basically negative energetic entities or forces that can be unintentionally invoked through improper magical practices. It's a concept that comes from the Kabbalistic tradition, which also influenced Western esotericism and ceremonial magic.
So it's a cautionary tale about the importance of approaching these practices with respect and a deep understanding of their potential power.
Exactly. The author emphasizes that while Tantra offers a path to liberation and enlightenment, it's not without its risks. It's essential to approach these practices with humility, discernment, and a willingness to learn from a qualified teacher.
It's like any powerful tool. It can be used for good or for ill, depending on the user's intention and skill.
I agree, and it highlights the importance of ethical considerations in practicing Tantra.
Speaking of ethical considerations, the book also touches on the use of psychedelics in Tantra, a topic we explored earlier. It emphasizes the importance of using these substances responsibly and under the guidance of a guru.
Yes, the author warns against the dangers of recreational drug use, suggesting it can lead to negative karmic consequences and even psychological harm. He emphasizes that in the tantric context, psychedelics are used as a tool for spiritual exploration and consciousness expansion, not as a means of escape or hedonistic indulgence.
So it's about approaching these substances with reverence and a clear understanding of their potential impact on both the individual and the larger energetic field.
Exactly, and it's about recognizing that true spiritual growth comes from within, not from external substances or shortcuts.
This has been a truly rich and thought-provoking discussion so far. I'm starting to appreciate the depth and complexity of Tantra much more.
Me too. It's a path that challenges us to expand our understanding of ourselves, our relationships, and the very nature of reality itself.
Before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, what are some of the key takeaways that stand out to you? What aspects of Tantra are you most curious to explore further?
For me, what's most fascinating is how Tantra encourages us to see the divine in the mundane, to experience the sacred in everyday life. It's about finding that spark of divinity within ourselves and in the world around us.
I agree. It's a very empowering perspective.
It is, and it invites us to live with more passion, purpose, and awareness.
Now, for our listeners who might be feeling a bit overwhelmed by all this information, what would you say are the most important things to remember about Tantra?
First and foremost, Tantra is a path of self-discovery and spiritual growth. It's about cultivating a deeper connection to yourself, to others, and to the divine. It's also important to remember that Tantra is not a quick fix or a one-size-fits-all solution. It's a journey that requires patience, discipline, and a willingness to embrace the unknown.
And finding a qualified teacher or guru can be invaluable for navigating this path safely and effectively.
Absolutely. It's essential to have a trusted guide to support your exploration and help you avoid potential pitfalls.
So it's about honoring the wisdom of tradition while also making space for personal exploration and growth.
Exactly. And it's about approaching this path with an open mind, a compassionate heart, and a deep reverence for the transformative power of love.
Well said. Now we're going to move on to the final part of our deep dive on Tantra. Join us as we continue to explore this ancient and fascinating path. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into Ecstasy through Tantra. It's been quite a journey exploring the philosophy, the history, and the practices of this ancient tradition.
It has. We've covered a lot of ground, from the concept of the magical child and the power of sexual energy to the importance of finding a qualified teacher and approaching these practices with respect and awareness.
Absolutely. Now, in this final part, I'd love to kind of shift our focus to the practical applications of Tantra.
Okay.
How can we take these ancient teachings and integrate them into our modern lives?
That's a great question. One of the most powerful ways is by cultivating a more mindful and present approach to our experiences, especially in our relationships.
So it's about bringing that tantric awareness into the here and now, not just reserving it for specific rituals or practices.
Exactly. The principles of Tantra can inform how we interact with our partners, how we communicate, and how we approach intimacy.
Could you give us some specific examples of how that might look?
Absolutely. One way is through practicing mindful touch, both within and outside of a sexual context. It's about being fully present in the moment, savoring each sensation, and connecting with your partner on a deeper level.
So it's about slowing down, paying attention, and really being present with the experience of touch.
Exactly. It's about transforming touch into a form of meditation, a way to deepen intimacy and connection. Another key aspect is communication. Tantra encourages open and honest dialogue about desires, boundaries, and needs.
That makes a lot of sense. Clear communication is essential for any healthy relationship, but it seems especially important when exploring something as intimate as Tantra.
It is. It's about creating a safe and trusting space for both partners to express themselves fully.
Now, the book also talks about the importance of seeing the divine in our partners, of recognizing the god or goddess within them. How can we cultivate this kind of reverence in our relationships?
It starts with a shift in perspective. Instead of seeing our partners through the lens of our own projections and expectations, we can start to see them as divine beings worthy of our love, respect, and adoration.
It's about seeing beyond the surface and recognizing the inherent sacredness within each other, wouldn't you say?
Exactly. And it's about treating our partners with that same reverence and devotion.
So it's about cultivating a sense of the sacred within our relationships. And this can extend beyond romantic partnerships to our relationships with friends, family, and even ourselves.
Absolutely. It's about bringing that tantric awareness into all of our interactions, seeing the divine spark in everyone and everything, and treating all beings with respect and compassion.
That's a beautiful idea. You mentioned that Tantra can also be applied to our relationship with ourselves. Could you elaborate on that a bit?
Of course, Tantra encourages us to explore our own bodies, our senses, and our energy with curiosity and acceptance. It's about cultivating self-love and embracing all aspects of ourselves, both the light and the shadow.
So it's about breaking free from shame and judgment and reclaiming our full sensuality and aliveness.
Exactly, and it's about recognizing that our bodies are temples worthy of our care and devotion.
That reminds me of what the book said about the importance of hygiene in Tantra. It's not just about physical cleanliness, it's about honoring the body as a sacred vessel.
Precisely, it's about treating ourselves with kindness and respect.
Now, for someone who's intrigued by Tantra, but maybe a bit intimidated by some of the more esoteric or advanced practices, what would you suggest as a starting point?
I'd recommend starting with simple practices like mindful breathing, body awareness exercises, and exploring sensual touch with a trusted partner.
So it's about taking small steps and gradually expanding your comfort zone.
Exactly. And remember, the journey is just as important as the destination.
Before we wrap up our deep dive, I want to revisit one of the key concepts we've been exploring, the idea that every sexual union creates a magical child. We've talked about this in the context of personal and relational transformation, but what other possibilities do you see in this metaphor?
What I find fascinating about this concept is that it invites us to consider creation on multiple levels if we think of the magical child as representing the manifestation of our intentions and desires. Then the potential for creation becomes limitless.
So through the practices of Tantra, we're essentially harnessing the creative power of sexual energy to bring our visions into reality.
Exactly. It's about aligning our intentions with our actions and using our energy to create the life we desire.
That's a really powerful idea, and it connects back to what the book said about the importance of will and intention. In Tantra, it's not just about passively experiencing energy, it's about actively directing it towards our goals.
I completely agree.
So it's about becoming conscious creators both of our individual lives and of the world around us.
Yes, it's about recognizing the immense power we have to shape our reality through our thoughts, our actions, and our energy.
Well, this has been a truly eye-opening deep dive. We've explored the history, the philosophy, the practices, and the transformative potential of Tantra, from the activation of chakras and the cultivation of sexual energy to the creation of magical children and the embodiment of divine awareness. Tantra offers a path for those seeking to awaken to a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
I couldn't have put it better myself, and while we've only scratched the surface of this vast and ancient practice, I hope our deep dive has sparked your curiosity and inspired you to continue exploring the path of Tantra.
Me too, and remember, this is a journey, not a destination. Take your time, be gentle with yourself, and enjoy the ride.
Beautifully said.
And with that, we've come to the end of our deep dive into Ecstasy through Tantra. Thank you for joining us.